is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Unspoiled, covering Rome, Season 1, Episode 3, An Owl in a Thornbush. In this episode, there is a lot changing really, really quickly. But the biggest and most embarrassing thing are all of the Senate fleeing Rome with this assurance that they'll just be able to turn around and take it right back. No big deal. No problem. It'll be fine. Y'all, I don't know how to tell you this, but you fucked up. Pompey, buddy, somebody needs to take your ass out. You suck. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Yama for commissioning this episode. Yama saw that I had not gotten another Rome commission for a while, and I was opening up new slots on Saturdays, and she was like, "Oh, I'm getting in there." So thank you very much, Yama, for that. Agnes is in the chat. Hello, Agnes. Agnes was here earlier for the Killing Eve episode as well. So there is just a lot happening, and I'm hoping that I sometimes have trouble staying under the hour, and I hope that I manage to do it this time, because there is honestly, there are so many little moving parts that happen here. Every episode, there's plenty of characters to keep track of. It's not like that's different, but it feels like everything is going to affect everything else. Does that make sense? So we open up with one of her servants getting whipped. And forgive me, guys, because I haven't covered this show since July, I think. So y'all, if Anya's in the chat, you can help me out with character names, I would really be grateful, because apparently Amazon is the only one that understands that we need help with that. And they do that Amazon Instant. But if it's on HBO, if it's on Hulu, or if it's on Netflix, I'm kind of screwed in that respect. But yeah, we are hearing about how Cesar has crossed the Rubicon, and over here old Emir Tully is absolutely torn about what to do. He's like startled that Cesar has crossed just one legion, and a lot of people are really, in particular, baffled about that. And he says not merely treason, but suicidal treason. But we get later on obvious, information that explains why this isn't suicidal in the least. This is a really smart move, actually. And it's because he can move that much faster. He winds up 35 miles outside of Rome within a day. And all of these guys who had been intending to gather their forces and really make a show of defending the city realize that it's going to take too long to get everybody massed together. So they have to run, which is fucking embarrassing. But at this point, nobody has really put together that that's what's going on. So, we have all of these people just sort of standing around talking about what a foolish thing this is to do. And it's honestly, they all deserve what they're getting, because the fact that they aren't reacting with more urgency is the word that I want, is just kind of it's just an arrogance, right? They're just assuming we don't have anything to worry about because this is just nonsense. He's not going to do anything. When has this guy ever done in the past anything? I don't have any history on this period. I don't know anything about what Cesar has done before that might make them think he would be this foolhardy. But I have to say, it doesn't feel like that's on his record. So the fact that everybody is just assuming that he has done something really stupid here is it's insulting and it's baffling, and it clearly, most of it feels to me like these people just don't really want to be bothered, and so they're telling themselves they don't need to worry about it. And this leads to this terrible, like, confrontation. It's not a confrontation with Cesar. It's a confrontation with, like, their situation as they have to flee the city in the middle of the night. And this is what leads to, like, the treasury getting stolen. So let's see. I'm going to back up a little bit, because Pompey here, he's, talking to the Porcius, I think is his name, the, other senator. And this senator, to be fair, is the only one that really understands the seriousness of the situation. And he's talking to Pompey and trying to, like, let the man have his say initially, because he's hoping that this guy is going to come out and say something fucking worth hearing. But Pompey is just talking out of his ass. And something about the fucking Illyrian pirates that he fought, and it really feels like what he is saying is, I'm going to talk about old battles that I've won to remind you that I've done this before and you don't need to worry about anything, but not actually talking about a plan. There's nothing solid here. And that's what he keeps doing, is sort of assuming that everything is going to, like, fall together simply because he has experience and history with this, like, you know, with the military, and that an idea will simply come to him. But he says, I've given word my legions are gathering. And he says, I'll crush him. The poor man is dead. But as we know, that takes too goddamn long. So going back to Cesar, who is on the road, and they're, you know, marching at a pretty decent pace here. He says, I want you to take out some cavalry and check out all of the defensive strong points between here and the city, and make sure that there aren't people hiding in wait. And I want you to deliver this proclamation. And he hands them something which we wind up getting read to us later. It's honestly pretty lenient. Basically, Caesar's like, look, I definitely get it. You guys probably could have taken up arms against me and, like, regret it now. If that's what you did, low key, I'm not even that mad at you. You can come over, be on my side. All y'all get to keep your shit that you, like, own. I'm not taking property away. I'm not trying to be a tyrant. I just really think I should be in charge. And I'm having the upper hand already, so I'm going to make this as easy on all of us as possible, is really how it feels. But, you know, not everybody is on board with this, as we wind up finding out. Lucius himself is on the side of the Republic and feels that what they are doing is treason, and winds up, like, quitting, which I don't know what that even looks like. But, I mean, I know what it was that he did, but I don't know that you get to just do that and walk away from it and not have any repercussions. Like, you can't just leave the army. You don't get to just do that. Even operations like my father being part of the guerrillas in Colombia, he had to flee to the United States and take on an assumed name because they would have tried to track his ass down. This is not a joke, you know? But he is riding off with Titus, and it's very clear Lucius is not happy with his assignment. He doesn't try to hide it at all. And Caesar asks this, what's his name? Mark Antony, what it is that makes this guy have such an attitude problem. And Mark Antony is like, well, he's on the side of the, Mark Junius. That's the one, right? Well, regardless, he says he believes that we are committing treason and that the gods are going to be real, real pissed and that we're going to be severely punished. To which Caesar says he may be right. It is Mark Antony, right? But yeah, he is... I kind of like Cesar, despite myself. Like, first of all, of course, he's intelligent. But also, I like the fact that he's willing to admit that there are things that could go wrong. And that's a real strength. You don't need to be negative and be like, oh, everything has gone wrong and it's terrible. Like, obviously, that's a self-defeating attitude. But you also can't go into things with your head in the sand, acting like you are going to be victorious, no problem, that things are just on your side, which is definitely how Pompey is acting. So when he says, well, he may be right, I like that there's at least a touch of humility there to him being like, well, who knows about the fucking gods? Like, maybe this guy is understanding. And he asks, do you think that we can trust Lucius? And Mark Antony says, deep 13th him. He'd follow the eagle up Pluto's arse, which it turns out is right up until a point. He's able to, like, deliver this proclamation, carry out these orders. But after this, he's out, or so he thinks. So the audience is led to think. We shall see. Meanwhile, back at Lucius's home, his wife, Niobe, is visited by her lover. And this dude is apparently a commoner, like, for serious. He is extremely unimpressive to look at. He's not particularly handsome. He's not particularly strong. He's not particularly anything that is memorable to me. Like, I feel that this is a character who could pop up in another episode, and I 100% would not recognize him at all. And honestly, that's probably only to his benefit, right? Like, it's best to be not memorable so that fucking Lucius isn't able to track his ass down super easily. But he is here without asking because he knows that Lucius is away, and he is desperate to see his son. And it's very clear that Niobe loves him and is absolutely torn apart by the fact that he and her can no longer be together. He tells her that he wants her help because he's going insane. You can't forsake me. You loved me once, you will love me again. And she says, I never loved you. And he's like, you can lie to yourself, but you don't fucking lie to me. And she starts crying. And it's honestly, like, obviously, really, I have to admire in some ways the fact that she is this dedicated to trying to get back to how it was, because it shows a certain amount of willingness to sacrifice something that's important to her simply for the lives of her and her daughter and her child, because she really believes if she tells Lucius the truth, that he will kill, she says he will kill us all, which I'm very, very curious if that's true. I don't really know what was customary in this world. Again, the history is not something that I'm super familiar with. And it's not like it's been unheard of throughout history for women who committed adultery to be killed, to be stoned to death, to have an ear cut off. Like, she is certainly right to be feeling threatened in some way. As far as a murder, I don't know if that's on the table. But her daughter comes in and is like, what are you fucking doing? Because she catches them in the middle of a kiss. And it's like, you promised that you would not see him again. And this is when she says, you have promised not to tell your father anything. And she says, he will understand. We thought he was dead. And that's when she says, he'll kill us all. And we go back to Lucius, who is staring at the fire and is obviously really, like, upset. And it you know, initially when we see this, we assume that he's feeling this way because of what's going on with the Republic and with Caesar. But as it turns out, he is thinking about his wife and the fact that she hates him, that like, he's like, you heard her, because he's talking to Titus, and Titus is the one that his wife kind of unloaded on and was just like, he's like unfeeling and cold and whatever. You heard her say that she hates me. And Titus says, what's your question? And he says, how do I stop her from hating me? Obviously. And he says, oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were making her hate you on purpose. And Titus says, what? Or Lucius says, why the fuck would I do that? And Titus is like, well, I don't know. You're the one who's supposed to be clever. I thought that you had like some special secret reason. And he says, I love her and I require that she loves me also. Otherwise, I am merely her slave and I cannot tolerate that. Which really is just putting the fucking point right where it needs to be. I love this. He doesn't just say, well, I need her to like me. It makes me feel bad. He's like, if she doesn't love me and I love her, she's got leverage. And that's not going to work. I obviously need to be in charge. You need to help me get back in charge. This isn't going to work. And there is something about the baldness of the way he's saying this that I admire, in so much as one can admire a person who doesn't understand that what they are saying is kind of fucked up. Like, he's being as honest as he can because he doesn't recognize how messed up it is to see a relationship in those sorts of terms where there are like, and to be fair, in this era and in a lot of people's relationships to this day, the way that things are structured, there are plenty of couples out there who sort of have to do the best they can, but they don't really like have the kind of affection that one would expect, and they married for other reasons or stayed married for other reasons, and they do approach the way they deal with one another in the way that you would a sort of business arrangement. For a long time when I was dating, I would play games like this. And the thing is, men say, I don't like women who play games, but that's not true. They don't like women who play games they lose at. But if men try and say they don't play games, period, they are the biggest liars. Like, don't believe any dude who tries to say that, because he is just in denial about this fact. I had great success while dating with doing he has leverage because of this. I need to get it back because of this. He thinks he's gained points by doing this other thing. I need to make it clear that I'm not that impressed with this, because so many men function under that very limited understanding of points columns. And as long as they are ahead in the points columns, especially if they are too far ahead and you have fucked up, they think they can get away with whatever the fuck they want. And you don't really get to say anything because they've been so good otherwise. And it's a real mindset that plenty of people out there still have. I've finally gotten through that phase in my life and understand that that's not healthy or smart. If you want to have mutual respect with the person that you're with, that kind of play leads to contempt. You know, it leads to you feeling resentful and not respecting the other person because you like are exploiting weaknesses about their personality and the way they see the world. It just leads to ugliness. But that's not something that they're like particularly worried about during a time where people are just trying to survive and get by. So he like even says who's going to miss me when I'm gone. He talks about who will perform the funeral rites, and Titus says he'll do it. And he's like, listen, I appreciate that, but like if I die, you're almost definitely dead too. So, you know, that's not really going to work out. And it's also not the same because you're just going to be doing it because of duty. You're not going to be doing it because you give a shit about me. And Titus doesn't even argue with him. He's just kind of like, yeah, I guess that's true. So, okay, we have, what is her name? Domina, as everybody keeps calling her, Atya. And she is going and finding her little, goatee man to give him an assignment. And what the assignment is to kill her daughter's husband or ex-husband. She absolutely kills it this episode. And I don't mean that. I mean, pun kind of intended. Atya is really interesting because she just does not care about anybody, and even herself. Like, when she's talking later as the mob is about to break in, and she's like, I will kill this one, and I will try and kill this one. If any of them wins, then you must kill me. And if I die, you must kill yourself after, because honestly, for you to stay alive after I am dead would be inappropriate. And, you know, one could say that it's one thing to talk about your death in a hypothetical and be this calm and this sort of detached about it. But there's literally an angry mob with a huge battering ram at her door when she's saying this. The danger is extremely real at this moment, and she is still cool as a cucumber. And it's really, like, astonishing to me how she manages to just sort of, like, compartmentalize what's going on. And even when she faces her daughter after the murder of her daughter's husband, and she does it so well. She makes it like it's such an accident that his body was brought to their house. Get out of here with this. Like, the whole play acting bit of it. Like, I can't believe that you would do this. And then when her daughter asks her, did you do this? Did you have something to do with it? She denies it with such sincerity and such ringing truth to the sound of her voice that you have to admire it if you aren't just repulsed by it. Her son, for what it's worth, seems to totally fucking see through everything and know precisely what the fuck she's doing. But her daughter, honestly, I don't even want to say that I think her daughter is stupid, because I don't think that's even fair. I think her daughter is desperate for somebody who cares about her, and her mother being guilty of this is just something that she can't face because that's too depressing. So she's willing to believe what Atya tells her, simply because living otherwise is just too fucking sad. And I kind of get that. You know, we all kind of make choices on what we decide to believe and not believe, and what we pay attention to and what we ignore based on what we can handle. And that's kind of what her daughter winds up having to do. And in the end, does it really matter that much that Atya is the one that killed her husband? Like, she is at Atya's mercy, no matter what she believes. So she may as well have the path eased for her a bit, with not believing that she's living in the same house with somebody who murdered her husband, than knowing the truth and making everything in her life more difficult, because she is constantly trying to fight the tide, which Atya kind of is in her life. Like, Atya is an inexorable force. She's like weather, you know? And yeah, this scene, she's like telling him that she's going to be having a party with some people coming over, and he's like, well, don't you want to lay low with Pompey's people out there? And she's like, first of all, I'm not going to be intimidated. Second of all, she doesn't say this, but we know, she is going to be entertaining allies. These are going to be people who are desperate to be protected by her in her house with its thick walls and its barred entrance that these guys do not succeed in, battering through. So it winds up being pretty good for her later on. But this dude who she's talking to, this little goatee guy, what is his name? I'm trying to find it here. He's not Marcus. That's Admir Tully. Timon? He's Timon, right? Timon? I hate saying Timon because that makes me think of Timon and Pumbaa. But what are you going to do? But yeah, he tells her that it's going to cost more because he's going to need more men. And she asks him, how much more do you want? And he says, oh, I don't want money. You know what I want. And she slaps him And he sort of laughs and says, well, yeah, something like that. And she says, you forget your place. And he says, well, really, my place is with my family. Say your word, say the word, and I'll go to them. And he's like smirking at her in this way that is very smug. Guys, I have to admit, I kind of like this guy as much as he's like gross. There's something about the fact that he is willing to like go up against Atia like this when nobody else ever does have leverage over her that I just can't help but admire, because that really does take some balls, you know? Yeah, it is so... And later on, even the scene where he kills What's-Her-Face's husband, I like was really impressed with how collected he was, you know? I'm trying to find what Atia's daughter's name is. It's really weird the way that these IMDb's are set up. I need to have a better like list, because it's all by like order of appearance a lot of the time, and so it can be harder to spot people. But this one is actually, I think, according to like who's the main character. But her husband's name, at least, is Glavius. And that is such a terrible name that he really does deserve to die. Like, let's be honest, Glavius is just gross. It just sounds so gross. So, we go to the crew that is coming across. Now, this whole thing is really the detachment coming across these other soldiers who I guess have are these kids who have, what's the word I want? Abandoned post. What's the word? Fuck. What do you call it when you like just run away from the army? Guys, what do you call it? Deserters. Oh, thank you, Agnes. Jesus Christ. My brain is not with it today. I am sorry. Are these all deserters? Because they're all wearing the red and the helmets of the Romans. But I guess what I'm thinking of as Caesar's Romans, these are all Pompey's people, right? Is that what this is? And they're all like 14 years old looking. Like they are really children. It is upsetting to see them get routed like this. I feel so bad about it. And one of the kids winds up getting away and goes and talks to Pompey and tells him about how they've come upon this crew that isn't that far from the city. And Pompey starts to realize his mistake and the fact that they've been just sitting ducks and he's not really doing very much. And he's just like, he says, this is highly irregular, unnatural even. To which I'm like, unnatural how? Like he has this idea of how war is supposed to work. And I'm just, dude, bless your heart, but there is no reason anybody has to follow any particular rules. What wins, wins. And somebody is like, well, you don't think that he's trying to just attack Rome directly, right? And he's like, actually, I think that's precisely what he intends to do. Like everybody just assumed he was going to do a confrontation like outside the walls or something. But the way that he's approaching things now, they're realizing that he's more serious about it. And when they talk about like potentially using some of the other soldiers for defense that they have here already, he's like, those guys are mostly here as like having returned from Gaul. They all followed Caesar up until a very short time ago. I am not going to rely on them to be on my side against Caesar all of a sudden. I just don't think that we're going to be able to pull this off. We are going to have to evacuate. And this is like when he says, what do we do now then? We must make a tactical retreat to the south. A tactical retreat, mind you. To which Porcius loses his motherfucking mind. He tells him Juno's cunt You can't, and I, like that as a swear is just the funniest thing to me. He's trying to make it clear, yeah, we're retreating, but we're going to be doing this so that we can gather our forces and come back. And Porcius is the only one who is like, you are full of shit. We are running, and we are not going to be turning around and getting it back just like that. You are out of your goddamned mind. You have fucked up. He tries to say, you lack understanding of things military, or you would see that my decisions have been perfectly correct at all times. You have lost Rome without unsheathing your sword. You have lost Rome, he screams at him. And you know what? He right, though. Guess what? So then comes the looting. There's a lot of upheaval now that all of these people in the city realizes that everybody is distracted. Nobody's going to be able to stop them from doing and taking whatever they want because everybody is starting to fucking panic. And there is a crowd outside of Atia's place, and one of them like chucks a burning torch into this, like through a skylight, basically, into a pool of water that they're all sitting and relaxing around. And there's something really amusing about it. I found that so funny. She is sitting there, and she has Caesar's girlfriend? I don't even know what to call this woman. Servilia of the Junie is what her name is listed as in the IMDb. But she, I guess, like Caesar's consort? Is that the word we want? And it seems like she is staying here as a show of like good faith to the fact that she is, that she believes the city can defend itself. But when it comes down to it and her son has to make a decision on whether to go or stay, he decides that he wants to leave because in the end, as much as Caesar is his friend, the Republic has to be more important than a friendship. So and it's pretty clear when he makes that decision that she's a little bit startled by it. And kind of thought, I guess, that he was going to just be willing to tough it out. But it becomes very clear that she's going to have to do this by herself. And he isn't really ready for that. The idea of her being here all alone and the fact that she's like really excited for it, to see Caesar again and for everything to be as everything that she has been hoping and waiting for to come to pass. That is the thing that's sort of boosting her and keeping her from like giving into despair, because she's been waiting for this moment for ages, really. And he doesn't seem to understand the depth of her feeling for Caesar. And I wonder, honestly, who is aware of their relationship? Who knows about how she feels about the guy? You know, I just don't really have a good sense of what they have been to one another. And I am interested to see her and Caesar together and see if that is reciprocated or if this is sort of a one-sided deal. So anyway, her son says to abandon Caesar. At this point, he says to abandon Caesar would make it look like we're mere slaves to fashion. And it's just a kind of a sad thing to know that he says this that sounds really well in the moment, but when the chips are down, he doesn't really believe what he's saying. It feels more like he's willing to make this stand as long as it's comfortable and easy, and he's hiding behind somebody else's walls, and it looks like there isn't really that much at stake yet. But then once things really start to go left later on, he really loses his cool completely. Meanwhile, Pompey and his wife and children are all fleeing. and she is having to like tell her children that we're sneaking out and you have to be quiet, like we are Odysseus getting away from the Cyclops, yada, yada, yada. And Pompey is trying to tell her everything is going to be fine. And she tells him, I have no doubt. And honestly, when she says, I have no doubt, it feels like she really means it when she says that. But I feel bad because this woman's going to be caught in the middle of Pompey's bad decisions. And that just sucks, you know, like she seems very lovely and she has like children and just, ow, I hate this sort of thing. Meanwhile, outside of Atia's, the raving mob is like pounding on the door. They haven't started with the battering ram yet, but they're lighting torches. They're really getting themselves worked up. And everybody who has been with her, she offers to let them spend the night. Meanwhile, fucking Pompey told his men to go and empty the treasury and bring all of the gold to such and such location. I don't even remember where. And again, it's a real moment of stupidity on his part to think that these guys are simply going to obey because of their duties when they're faced with literally no potential consequences for running off except for dying, which they are almost definitely going to be facing anyway when they join the rest of the soldiers. I just can't get over that he has a general in charge of this. Like, there really needs to be several layers of oversight here. In this panic situation, it just is so fucking predictable the way this winds up going down. So there are a couple of oxen that are pulling this wagon. I appreciate how slowly they're going because gold, for those who don't know, one square or 1 cubic foot of solid gold weighs 1,600 pounds. I think I remember reading somewhere. It's insanely heavy. I'm going to look this up again. Cubic foot of gold weight. If you change it to gold, it would weigh about, nope, that's the wrong one. A cubic foot of gold weighs about 1,206 pounds. Okay, so I was high, but still anything over 1,000 pounds is crazy town banana pants to me. So think about all of those chests, and those are gold bars. They like, some of it is made into coins, but a great deal of it is solid gold bars. That shit must weigh it's just insane. And I am in love with the whole like subplot of these guys deciding to take off with this cart. It's just a little thing. None of these characters, I don't get the impression, are going to matter in the end at all. It's just a circumstantial thing, a look at what people were like, that looters were amongst the common people, but also amongst the soldiers, that this leads to the entire treasury of Rome being essentially empty. They took as much as they could. I don't know how much is actually left, but this is something that could hobble whoever winds up taking Rome over. And by the end of this episode, Caesar has not yet swept in. So I don't know what he has in his possession in terms of money, but I would assume it's not gonna be enough. Although they did have a lot of spoils from their wars, so maybe it would. I don't really know what to think in terms of money because I have a hard time understanding a lot of the time what is required to govern a place, and you need to also have some idea of the value of currency at the time and what any given coin or gold bar could actually purchase. What was its value? So it's difficult for me, but I assume that this is bad news for Caesar. And I'm not trying to say that Titus deciding not to turn this money over surprises me. That would be foolish for me to think that he's, of course, just going to run off and be like, I found all this money. I did expect, though, that Titus was going to take some and give the rest back in order to look good. I figured one of those gold bars will be pretty much enough for like the next 10 years. And if he has that, he's set. And then he gets the accolades and the honor and possible promotion for being so honest and trustworthy that he turns in this entire cart. I feel like he could have played this, but it looks like by the end of the episode, he's just straight up hiding that shit. Which, how the fuck what does he think he's going to do with an entire cart full of gold bars? There's no way to do that and like have people not question where your money's coming from, right? Like that is just going to draw a lot of questions. It's like there was I don't know how many of you have heard this story, but there was a guy who did one of those lottery like pools with his coworkers. He worked at a construction site, and they did a pool, and the next day he came in and he told them all that nobody won, like none of the tickets won, but that he had to get knee surgery, so he was going to be out for a couple of weeks. And he came back from knee surgery, shocker, and then told them all, so I got another job, so I'm going to leave. And then mysteriously began to like buy yachts and stuff. And everybody started to realize that he had like, and he alleges that the money he won was through a separate lottery ticket that was his and not through the pool's lottery ticket, like, or tickets. It wasn't one of theirs. It was one that he bought for himself, which in my opinion is absolute horseshit. And they, I think, sued him in order to get a share, but it's the kind of thing that they all noticed that he was buying stuff. They all noticed that there was no reason he should be able to afford XYZ. And I don't get what Titus thinks he can do that isn't going to draw a ton of attention on himself. Unless he's planning to turn it in eventually and he's hiding it at the moment so that he can like tell Cesar where it's hidden and not risk it being looted by people in the meantime. But correct me if I'm wrong, Cesar was like heading up the road as at the front of the line as he's hiding it. So that shouldn't have been an issue. But we'll get there. First, we have Titus explaining how to fuck women properly to Lucius. And he's telling him there's a spot just above her cunny. It's like a little button. Attend to that button and she will open up like a flower. And fucking Lucius is such a goober and stops and says, how do you know this of her? Like this is the fucking peculiar thing that his wife has going on and no other woman. And Titus looks at him completely baffled for a second and is just like, dude, all women have them. Ask anyone. What are you talking about? And Lucius like calms down and looks like he feels like an idiot, which he should. I mean, precious Lucius doesn't even know where a clitoris is. I mean, so many men don't, honestly. I don't know how many of y'all have seen the various like cringy sex scenes that men have written, but there are definitely dudes who talk about shoving their dicks into her clit because they think that's the vagina. And they don't understand women's bodies, and it is just very revealing and humiliating and embarrassing, and it's the worst. Meanwhile, the guys who stole all of that gold just grab up some poor girl off the road, and obviously are planning to just keep her as somebody that they can just rape during their spare time. And it's pretty horrifying. And when Titus spots her, when he sees, like, the whole thing with them spotting this wagon load of gold and putting it together that, like, they're going really slowly. They're way outside the city limits, which doesn't make a lot of sense. You've got a lot of men guarding just a wagon, so what could this even be? All of this seems very suspicious. And he sees the girl, and it seems to move him. Now, this is interesting because the first episode, the thing that we hear from fucking Lucius is him asking whether or like how many women he's fucked in the last month have not been crying at the time, basically implying that Titus is out here raping all over the place. And him seeing this girl now and having the reaction that he doesn't line up so much with that. You know, I don't know if Lucius just doesn't understand who Titus is and he's wrong about the fact that Titus likes raping. If we're supposed to be like, well, he rapes sometimes, but most of the time he likes and cares about women. Who knows? But this will be something that I'm going to come back to and puzzle over a little bit. Because he is trying to get the wagon for sure, but the girl is tied to it. So when the fighting breaks out around the wagon, the oxen get spooked and they start to run away, and she gets sort of dragged behind them, and she's trying to like free herself, but she can't do it. And he comes across her eventually and he thinks she's dead. But when he turns her over, she blinks and she's obviously still alive. And he winds up saving her along with the wagon. And I'm extremely curious what this is going to turn into because, like I said, I had assumed that he was kind of fine with exactly this sort of behavior. You know, she's being kept prisoner and raped by soldiers. I assumed that he would have also participated in these sorts of activities. But evidently not, or evidently only when he does it is it okay, which there's no two ways about it. Plenty of people are like that. Plenty of people are just like, you know, I can do it, but everybody else, when they do it, that's fucked up. So maybe. We go to this scene with Niobe and her servant, and I don't remember this woman's name. But she's asking her to help bar the doors. And the servant woman is saying, it looks like your man is going to come home after all. Because everybody had been assuming that he would have died out there. And the woman is like, you don't sound very happy about it. And Niobe says, of course I'm happy. And the woman says, if you say so. And Niobe sort of drops the thing and almost hurts herself. She's got this like huge like 2x4 that she's barring the doors with. And she admits, I try so hard to love him. I really want to love him. It would be so much easier if I loved him. And I'm honestly not even sure if I want him to come back. And it's a terrible moment. I feel really bad for Niobe. Like, she's just in such a shit situation, you know? She really genuinely thought he was gone. What was she supposed to do? Just keep on living alone forever? I guess so. That's what so many people, I was going to say men want, but just in general, people are like, well, I want it to be that if something were to happen to me, you would never look at anybody else for the rest of your life. That I would be the one and live in your imagination forever and nobody else would ever matter. I'm not that way. Like, of course I want Owen to mourn, but I want him to be happy too. But plenty of people don't really like have that capacity. So Pompey's men are deserting the city. They're deserting Rome. Half the Senate is a horse. And this is Edmure Tully yelling about this, and is absolutely like flipped out. He just never expected anybody to do this. And he's like, I don't know what to do now. We are in such an awkward position. If we stay, we are absolutely declaring for Caesar and we're declaring for the rebellion. But if we go, we're with Pompey in the Senate. There's absolutely no middle ground. There's no way to like straddle this. And she tells him, what do you think we should do? And it's really something that she's like his mother. She's obviously intelligent. She's obviously got a vested interest in whichever choice he makes. And yet she's sitting there and allowing him to make the call, because that's apparently what she needs to do, is to sit back and let him make the call, because she's a woman. And she's also trying to prepare her son for making choices. So he says, the Republic is more important than any friendship. Do you agree? And she says, it's your decision. She doesn't say if she agrees or not. And he says, tell your women to be ready and we'll leave as soon as possible. And she tells him, I'm not leaving. And he's like, the fuck? And she says, I waited for Cesar for 8 years. I'm not leaving now. He's finally fucking coming back. He says, you can't stay if I go. And she says, of course I can. I can do as I wish. And he says, if you stay, you're an enemy of Rome. Pompey has said so. And she's like, yeah, but honestly, Pompey can say what he wants. It doesn't feel like he's in a position to be making any sorts of threats. And he's like, but you don't know that. And if you are paired up with Caesar and something happens to him, you're going to die. That's what will happen. You will be the mistress of a tyrant who is deposed. To which she says, I can't help it. I love this guy. I'm doing what I'm doing. And he throws out something really insulting about getting some slave for her to fuck if she's just horny. And she stares him down, and he looks ashamed of himself, as he should. And finally, she just tells him, look, you've got to come to peace with this. I'm doing what I'm doing. I still love you. I respect your decision to do this, but I'm making the choice that I need to make for myself. And eventually he takes her hand and he kisses it and lays his head on it. And honestly is clearly really upset. He seems very moved by the fact that he's having to leave her here. It's a bummer. So let's see I'm trying to see. There's a moment, where I think, oh yeah, this is right. This is when we have, Timon coming up against Glabius. And honestly, Glabius is 1.5 feet taller than Timon. And the fact that Timon has sure, this guy is penned in. There's no denying that the dude is about to get taken down either way. But I have to admire Timon's skill here in dodging this dude and not getting injured, even though he's got a reach on him that's probably pretty dangerous. He even says, can you just let my men live? And Timon sort of smiles and says, sorry, it's orders. And I want to hate Timon, and I just don't. I just can't. There's something about him that's sort of likable. And he realizes in a second that Glabius is about to charge him with this sword. And when he does, Glabius, bless him, just basically charges into a dagger that he's holding. And winds up dead in a second. It just takes almost nothing, Meanwhile, Niobe is hiding in her house, and she's rocking the baby and singing and watching outside to see what happens. And I just really, that must have been awful to be in the position where you're helpless and just kind of waiting for news and you have no idea what's happening out there. And the next day we see Rome abandoned. There's fucking chickens everywhere. There are all of these if there were such things in this area as tumbleweeds, they would be rolling through. And there are people here coming to Atia begging for safe passage in her home to be kept from the hordes outside. And a lot of these people are trying to act oh, we're not with Pompey. We've never been with Pompey. But she is pointing out for a few of them that they're only staying here because they're afraid that their factories and their storehouses are going to be looted. Not that they are here because of, any sort of loyalty to Caesar. And she is charging them 5,000 denarii to stay. To which one guy is like, really? That's high. And she's just like, can you not? That's what you're paying. And he agrees immediately. It appears she has some sort of stronghold with her home, which is really interesting. And I'm wondering if that's circumstantial or if she has been prepared for something like this to happen or if her family was prepared for it. I don't know. But I love that they're the contingent with the senators and Pompey is walking out, and Durio says, he's asked about Durio, which I believe Durio is the one that was supposed to go and get the gold. And I don't know if Durio was the one who decided to turncoat or if he's the one that was murdered. I'm going to assume He's the one that was killed and like left in the city. But he says, Durio is my best man. He will not fail me. And Porcius is just staring at him with a lot of doubt and is just kind of like, but what if not? What do we do to pay for everybody who's following us? What do we do to feed everybody? And Pompey is blithely unconcerned, and it's just like, don't worry about it. He'll bring the gold back. We'll have plenty. It'll be no problem to take care of all of this, and we'll be back in Rome before spring. To which Porcius says nothing, but just sort of looks at him with this expression of just, I really want to buy what you're selling, and I just can't do it. I just can't do it. So Lucius, for his part, comes upon the crest of a hill and looks down on Rome and realizes that everybody has fled. And he is unwilling to believe that this is an actual retreat. He can't handle the idea that soldiers of the Republic would just fucking turn and run, and is convinced that this is some sort of stratagem. He can't buy it otherwise. And I kind of feel for him in that moment. He's being let down on all fronts. The Republic is disgracing itself. Caesar is committing treason, basically. Lucius doesn't have a lot of places to turn for what he considers honorable behavior at the moment. And speaking of which, after this encounter is when they run into the wagon full of gold that's being drawn. And these guys all sense that shit's about to go left, you can see. And everything happens that I mentioned before. These dudes all wind up dead. And we have the whole thing with Atia and killing her daughter's husband. We have let's see, I'm trying to find there's a conversation between, Titus asks Lucius to go and help that girl and find her and get her untied and yada, yada, yada. And Lucius wants nothing to do with it. He's just basically, we follow orders. And Titus says something about, but that poor girl. And Lucius says, you will do your duty. And I really enjoy this undercut of what you expect an honorable man to be, because it's so frequent that you have somebody who's, quote, honorable, but it's done according to our modern sensibilities of what that means. And an honorable man, according to what we know, would go and cut that girl loose and help her. But he thinks being honorable is following orders and not getting involved in something that doesn't concern him. And you would think, if I had asked you in the first episode which one of these two was going to go and help her, of course you would think Lucius. But Titus says, you are a mean bastard. It's true. You've got no love in you. You can say whatever you want to Niobe about loving her and caring about her, but she's not going to believe a word of it. And it kind of seems to get to Lucius, and he winds up going to a temple and praying to Venus to make his wife love him. And then he goes and talks to her at the end of the episode, and he tells her, I have come to see that through ignorance I have not treated you as I should. And she tries to stop him, and he says, when we married, you only had 13 summers, and soon enough I was gone. But now you are a woman, and I know nothing of women. Soldiering is all I know, which is not useful. And I have been sullen and untrusting and cold. And I am trying to do better. I'm not made of stone. I can change. And I swear on the life of my daughter's son, I will change. And, this is killing her, because that's not who that baby is. But he's trying, and he's being really heartfelt here. And she wants to confess what's going on with her. And she starts to say, I have been, and she's clearly trying to say unfaithful. And he interrupts her and just says, the past is in the past. Just essentially, whatever has gone on we're letting it go. We're starting over. The past is gone. And she nods, and I really wonder how much he means it when he says that. Does he really, like, if he found out what went on, would he really believe the past was in the past? Like, you know, guys can say things. People in general can say things. That doesn't mean that's what's going on. I'm worried about her. I really am. I could see him losing his temper and, like, at least beating the shit out of her, you know? But I do like this moment between the two of them and sort of coming to this understanding. And honestly, the scene where Titus opens all of those trunks and realizes that they're full of gold, and the almost heart attack that he has when he understands what this is really something. It is some good acting. He's like in a state and really has to struggle to pull these goddamn oxen out of the road. Like, they are not inclined to listen to him. Meanwhile, the rest of the army is about to sort of catch up, and he is so friggin' strong. He's like a damn bull himself that he does manage to get them moving and pulling the thing. And I think the very last scene is Mark Antony talking to Cesar and saying, "You are about to enter Rome as a blood-stained conqueror, yet you look as calm as a cup of water." To which Cesar says, "Well, you know what? I'm not, but I'm real glad it looks that way, because that's the impression I need to make." And he passes by the cart rolling up the hill with somebody shrouded in what looks like, you know, a cloak or something. But we know that that's Titus wrapped in like a random sheet that he found, a piece of like burlap, to hide the fact that he's wearing Roman colors. And I just need to know what the fuck Titus thinks he's doing. Where is he even going? What are you doing, buddy? I just can't imagine. I am super curious. So that's the end of the episode. I'm sorry that I kind of bounced around a lot, but like I said, this is a big one. There's a lot going on. So, and my head is not awesome this morning. It's a mess. So I'm going to wrap. Thank you guys so much for all listening, to Agnes for being in the chat and helping me. Octavia, by the way, is Atia's daughter's name, which I will remember at some point, I swear. And again, thank you to Yama for commissioning this. And I will see you all again soon, hopefully, with a new episode. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.